Hello, Richard Tromans here again at Artificial Lawyer TV. Today we're talking about the digitization of in-house legal teams. With us is Sarvarth Misra, who is the CEO and co-founder of ContractPodAi. Hi, Sarvarth.
Hey, Richard.
Great to have you on the show. You probably know more about how the in-house legal teams of the world are transforming than many other people because they're your client base and you're working with them every day. So first of all, let's just sort of set some basic terms. So what do we mean by the digitization and transformation of an in-house legal team? What does that actually look like?
Yeah, no, well, firstly, thank you for the time and happy to be here for sure. And let's dive into digital transformation. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible, but hopefully give you a couple of points here briefly. I mean, when we think about digital transformation, it is a phenomena by which, firstly, businesses are able to digitalize and, in many cases, automate their data and processes by adoption of technology. Digital transformation also in now in the new modern world is all about a new operating model, which has technology at the very center, if not a technology first adoption model for sure. And another final point around digital transformation in general, which most of us sometimes forget when we get into these programs, is that it's a change management program. And more specifically, it's culture change within organizations. And that is uh, quite something to achieve. And I think sometimes all of us get obsessed with just the technology aspect of it and but forget the change management side of it and culture management side of it. It's certainly something to keep in the mind. And when I talk to customers and customers talk to us, that's pretty much in the front and center of their thinking. How will this work? And specifically with lawyers. I mean, I'm trained as a lawyer by background. I was a corporate M&A lawyer, and we were trained to be risk averse, us lot. So I think when we think about digital transformation, there certainly is the fear of failure getting into it. So I think it requires a lot of thinking before getting into it. And that's what certainly I recommend to customers. And where we've seen successes happen with digital transformation, it's where really folks have thought about this. They've thought about change management. Thought about adoption. They've thought about how do you incrementally do digital transformation as well.
But what does it mean in real terms, though? Because I imagine that, hopefully there's a lawyer watching this, and they work in an in-house legal team, and they're looking around them. They're going, "Well, I'm sitting with my computer, and we have a DMS, and we have all kinds of other tech tools that you would expect. Aren't we already digitally transformed? I mean, what more do you want us to do?"
That's a really good question, and I think that's where the difference lies. I think uh, when lawyers more and more we talk to from our customer base, when they think about digital transformation, they're looking at attaining a critical business outcome. So the approach towards onboarding software or multitudes of software is it helping you attain a critical business outcome? Now, for lawyers specifically, these could vary from the common, more cliched one, if I may say so, trying to do more for less. How do you support faster revenue recognition as a legal department team, which is effectively lean, but as a large organization? How do you do a runner governance program? So they may have stack of technologies, but in most cases where we go in, we realize that number one, they're not being utilized at all. So the adoption is questionable, to be honest. And they may have bits and bobs of technology in their system or in their sort of toolkit, but number one, it's not really integrated as a process. And number two, there is no adoption. So you can have the world's best technology, but if you've not been able to adopt it as part of a combined integrated program, that's not digital transformation. And the other aspect, which is becoming more and more common when lawyers are thinking about digital transformation, is number one, like I mentioned, is what's the critical business outcome they're after? But two, how are they measuring success and failure? So success and failure, in my view, in a digital transformation world, it's not about I have XYZ sort of technology, but are you hitting your quantifiable key metrics? So if you understand what your critical outcome is, let's say your critical outcome today is trying to do more for less. So the first thing in the contracting world, if you're a general counsel, you'll try to do certainly is say, hey, here's my high volume, low complexity contracts. I shouldn't be doing this. Technology should be able to self-service this. So have you been able to, example, run a program around self-servicing contract desk? This is a very basic, simple example to just put it in context. Have you been able to do it? And therefore, how do you quantify success and failure for that? Have you been able to roll out? What's the volume of these contracts you're being able to run? What is the effectiveness and efficiency metrics you've been able to really real time measure and therefore show a return on investment around this? Is it really helped you create that outcome that to achieve more for less? Therefore, as a legal function, you're focusing more on the strategic legal work and you've been able to kind of commoditize with technology this sort of high volume, low complexity work with the checks and balances involved in it. So, I mean, again, like I said, I mean, this is a good question because a lot of folks just think about technology, and I'm a technologist, run a technology business, but I mean, having run this for several years now, the understanding where the market's going is really around thinking about critical business outcome as a function and then measuring that with quantifiable metrics, not because otherwise, I mean, success and failure becomes a democratic vote. Whereas if you're able to really show real time the quantification of that critical outcome, I think you can get better adoption and you can get much more excitement around technology from number one, your own team and across the business as well.
No, absolutely. Well, let's just dig into that a bit more. So, okay, so the self-serve, that's a great example. But if we go up sort of a higher level of complexity, I mean, what would be something that you would see an in-house team doing that would be adding, real value to how they work?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So let's flip that self-serve to the other side of third-party contract review as well. So typically, a lot of general counsel now are looking at running because for lawyers now, the key pain point more and more outside of cost and trying to do more for less is the job they've been hired to do, which is governance, risk, and compliance. So, in the contracting world, if you have received third-party contracts, every organization receives that, or contracts from the other side. How are you managing your third-party contract review process? Today, more and more sophisticated in-house counsels are thinking about level one of contract review to say that, hey, can we use business automation plus artificial intelligence technology to be able to really give us insights around, here's a contract, what our key risks are. Can you highlight what my key risk is, the first level legal review of that? But really from that point, use that insights to drive value. And the value there is running, does this adhere to your playbook? Do you accept as a business, example, liabilities, indemnities to a particular provision? Therefore, I think technologies in 2020 now exist, multitude of technology exists, which is able to support lawyers to be able to get that output out. And they can almost run a risk and compliance program around things like scorecarding risk as well. So you're able to, number one, create precedents now to say that, hey, this is high level risk. It tells the user directly, can't accept this. Here's the reason why we can't accept it. It also gives the user the ability sometimes to be able to say, hey, here are backup positions for us. So you can utilize that. You can scorecard risk, and therefore you have much more consistent governance over your contracts. And that's a big checkbox for a lot of counsel. So being able to run a digital transformation program on that risk and compliance side of it in a much more regulated world as we live in today, for sure, is certainly value add, because then you've got lawyers, number one, really adding value because they've created that program. The risk and compliance program is not being created by machines, generally being created by lawyers, and this is where they're really adding value. And eventually, when you're coming to your top level negotiation of contracts, that's what lawyers want to do. I mean, I don't meet many in-house lawyers who get super excited about drafting an NDA or doing a first level legal review. I mean, you have to get it done, of course, but I think it's the things that gets the juices flowing for lawyers is that strategic legal work, adding value, and also giving insights to the business to saying, hey, here's what we're seeing in our liabilities and indemnities. How can we drive things like our insurance premiums down to show if you run a good governance program on your contracts, the impact you can make as a lawyer is the business impact you can make is to show that to your broker and run your insurance premiums down. So a lot of value there.
Absolutely. Well, let's just dig into that point about extracting useful information from the contracts and the contracting process. I mean, something we hear a lot about. Get into the contracts, use NLP or other methods, extract this information, create dashboards, and then after that, everything will be wonderful. But I guess the question is, okay, so you've built this dashboard. Do in-house lawyers actually use them, and what are they using them for?
It's a really good question. And I think that adoption is something which could get better.
Mm.
I think I'm the first one to say that absolutely. And I think it's on suppliers and consultants or whoever to drive that change, number one. But I mean, the value which a lot of folks more and more are getting out of that is they use that insight to take decisions because you have data now which is telling you how you've negotiated problems, where your risk as a business lie, right? Because you would think about if you're accepting if 60% of your contracts, as an example, a dashboard will tell you how many of your contracts you're signing up on have unlimited uncapped liability, right? So if you're able to even get those data points over a period of time, I think you can take critical business decisions in changing overarching the organizational process because you're able to take that data and show it to your CEO and say, hey, here's where our risk lies. Here's what's keeping me awake at night as a law, as it should. And you are really using that data to take critical business decisions, whether it's about pricing. You could use it for pricing. If you could see, if your uh, aging errors are quite a lot in your contract, you can say, hey, let's work with finance, or we need to fix this. This is what our data is telling us. If your liabilities are high, indemnities are high, you want to be able to fix it and talk to your sales teams and your procurement teams to say that we have to get into better position as an organization. So you can really use that data to drive that critical business change around it. Now, as you rightly pointed out, I'm sure a lot of organizations and a lot of general counsel will tell you they could do better with that data. And I think that's about leadership. Again, I think it's this is about, in many ways, in my way, any digital transformation is about proactive leadership. So if you're able to show if your data is accurate over a particular period of time, I think your organization will listen to you and they'll really see the value in what you've created because it's also a big there is a big upside for general counsel to do this because the perception, as dare I say, historically has always been that legal as the forbidden C word, cost center. So how do you go from being a cost center to being a value based center is when you're able to show, hey, here's how I've changed the needle, not thinking, and this is how we're going to make an impact on the business. Because I don't think any function within an organization, and because in our cases, Richard, I mean, we just deal with corporations and in-house counsel. So, I mean, I don't think you can take decisions or make impact in a silo. So legal by itself can, yes, create some efficiencies, create some ROIs as a legal department. But the bigger piece is, can they make an impact on organizational wide strategy and, save and create that efficiency and effectiveness. And, there are ways of doing this. And contract is, as you know, is your top line and your bottom line is all driven its revenue and its expense base. So there's a lot there to be done.
Absolutely fascinating. Well, just last question now, and that is, I guess, around uptake. I mean, you've been working in this field for several years. Um, how far do you think larger corporates are changing? From what you've seen, and what do you think the direction of travel is now over the next few years?
Really good question. When I kind of got into the market at that stage, we all knew, and I think you write a lot about this, was a question of when, not if question. And I think, any kind of technology adoption in an early stage market, and this is the early stage market, to be honest, for all of us, is, you go through this full adoption curve. I think the market got to a stage where it was fashionable as well to say, I mean, we are very unfashionable to say you don't want a digital transformation today. But maybe that's the silent majority, who knows? But I mean, I think there was an aspect of everybody was saying we want to do it, but there was a percentage of the market certainly who wasn't really executing on it. uh, and I think in many ways I've seen that there are certain trigger points which in any other sector as well, which drives more technology adoption. And I think perhaps we may have just found one COVID for certainly when I'm seeing adoption in our own numbers of the usability of software by our customers, they've skyrocketed.
Oh,
The amount of businesses who have accelerated their digital transformation has just gone phenomenal. I mean, some sectors are suffering. I mean, and I say this with humility. I mean, of course, some sectors are suffering. If you're a pub down the street, you may not have the money to implement software, but if you're a larger organization, you're seeing this the next way of life. This is your new operating model. So the amount of acceleration, I think, and I'm sure many of our peers have seen as well, around the amount of folks who are signing up and really want to do it strategically has exponentially increased over the last 6 months. Because there's a drive in a remote environment, an environment where you can't sit face to face and negotiate contracts. If you can't collaborate in the same way, you don't have the same accessibility. How do you do business continuity? So, I mean, this is sometimes it's those drivers which really accelerate transformation in many sectors. And I think we're seeing that almost getting out of that chasm, if I may say so, which we were, it'd be fair to say, there was growth. The reports are always great on legal tech, how much is growing. I'm sure you report quite a lot. There's a lot of private equity, we see money betting on the sector as well. No pressure there, by the way. But there is always that. But it needed that trigger point, and I think this was that stage that we all have realized. We're not going to go back in the same way of working as an operating model. So everybody will have to innovate. And we're humans, we adopt and adapt. So I think that's where we are.